All right, today we're going undercover. We're going to dive deep into the hidden world of water quality. So, take a look at this glass of water. Looks perfectly clean, right? Seems harmless. But looks can be, well, they can be super deceiving. What if I told you that every single drop has a story? And sometimes that story is basically a crime scene, just packed with clues and suspects. So, for the next few minutes, we're going to do just that. We're launching our own forensic investigation. Yeah, think of it like CSI Water. We're going to uncover what's really lurking in there and what actually makes water safe to drink.
Okay, so where do we even begin our investigation? Well, it starts with a pretty basic question. How does water that looks so pure get, well, dirty in the first place? The thing is, water is a natural traveler.
I mean, think about its journey. From the second it forms in a cloud, falls as rain, and seeps through the ground, it's constantly picking up hitchhikers. It's dissolving minerals straight from the rocks, grabbing organic stuff from the soil, and, yep, you guessed it, collecting pollutants from all sorts of human activities.
All right, so just like any good detective, we're going to start with the physical evidence. The stuff you can actually see, touch, and measure. These are the first big clues right there at our crime scene.
And right away, we have to make a key distinction. You've got your suspended solids. These are the things we can see, like tiny bits of silt or clay. Those are our obvious clues. But then you have the dissolved solids. These guys are our hidden suspects. They're molecules that have totally blended in with the water. And we're going to need some special tools to find them. So our first major piece of physical evidence, it's called turbidity. Now, this isn't just about how many particles are floating around, it's about how they scatter light, which is what makes the water look cloudy or murky. It's basically the water's unique fingerprint, left right at the scene. Okay, so what does a fingerprint like that tell us? Well, for one, it's not great to look at. But more importantly, all those little particles, they can act as hiding spots for nasty chemicals and microbes. And out in a river or a lake, super high turbidity blocks sunlight, which can totally wreck the ecosystem for the plants and animals that live there. And hey, it's not just about cloudiness. There's also color. And I don't mean just muddy water. I'm talking about true color, which comes from stuff that's dissolved. You know that tea-colored look you see in some rivers? That's from tannins from old leaves. For an investigator, that's another dead giveaway. Okay. The physical clues gave us some solid leads, but now it's time to break out the forensic kit. We're going deep beyond what the eye can see and diving into the chemical makeup of our water to unmask those invisible suspects. All right, first test from our kit is in. The reading is a concentration over 180 milligrams per liter. Now, I know that number by itself doesn't mean a whole lot, but in our line of work, in water forensics, it points a giant finger at a very, very common culprit. And the verdict is, we are dealing with very hard water. That just means it's packed with dissolved minerals, usually calcium and magnesium. Now, it's not typically a danger to your health, but trust me, this suspect is notorious for causing a whole lot of other problems. Let's pull up the rap sheet on hard water, shall we? It's responsible for that crusty scale that builds up in your pipes and appliances. It fights with your soap so you can't get a good lather. It leaves those annoying spots on your clean dishes. And yeah, it can even make your water taste kind of off. Okay, next test up is for alkalinity. Now, this is interesting. It's not a measure of how alkaline the water is right now. Instead, it's a measure of its ability to fight back against acids, to resist changes in its pH. You can think of it as the water's own built-in self-defense mechanism. If the alkalinity is high, it can soak up acidic pollutants without the pH going haywire, which is absolutely critical for keeping fish and other aquatic life safe. So we've got our physical clues, we've identified some chemical suspects, but the biggest crime we're investigating, it's not just about what's in the water. It's about what that stuff does. And that brings us to the climax of our case, the Great Oxygen Heist. See, when organic pollution, we're talking stuff from sewage or agricultural runoff, gets into the water, it becomes a feast for microbes. And those microbes, they turn into thieves. But what exactly are they stealing? What vital element are they ripping right out of the ecosystem? Oxygen. They're stealing dissolved oxygen. As all these bacteria go to town breaking down the pollution, they suck up the very oxygen that fish and insects need to breathe. If you get too much of this waste, it can literally suffocate an entire ecosystem, a whole river, a whole lake, gone.
So how do we measure the scale of this theft? Well, one of our key tools is called biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD for short. What this test does is measure how much oxygen those microbes are going to need to chow down on all the biodegradable stuff. It's the biological story of the crime. But wait, BOD only tells us part of the story, the part the microbes can eat. What about the tougher stuff, like industrial chemicals that aren't biodegradable? For that, we need another tool, chemical oxygen demand, or COD. This one's a lot faster. It uses a really strong chemical to break down pretty much all the organic junk in there, giving us the complete chemical story of the crime. So think of it this way. BOD and COD are two different views of the same crime scene. BOD tells us the story from the biological side of things, what's going to happen naturally over time. COD gives us the fast, complete chemical picture of the total pollution. And because COD measures basically everything, not just the biodegradable stuff, the COD value for a water sample is pretty much always going to be higher than its BOD.
Okay, we've examined the physical evidence, we've interrogated the chemical suspects, and we've uncovered the motive behind the great oxygen heist. I think it's time for our final verdict.
So, what did we find? Here's the rundown. Water is way more complex than it looks. It's this intricate crime scene. The visible clues, like turbidity, they just hint at bigger problems. The hidden suspects, like hardness, have very real effects. But the ultimate crime? It's that oxygen heist, pulled off by organic pollutants. And thankfully, we have the tools, BOD and COD, to measure just how big that crime really is. And why does any of this detective work matter? Well, because understanding these clues is how we fight back. It's how scientists and engineers design wastewater treatment plants that actually work. It's how we protect our lakes and rivers, and ultimately, it's how we make sure the water we all need to survive is safe.
So it turns out every drop of water really does have a story to tell, doesn't it? It's full of physical clues, chemical secrets, and high-stakes drama. So the real question I'll leave you with is this. Now that you know how to read the clues, what story is the water around you telling?